Hi, I'm Grace Lynch. Welcome to my channel. Today's video, I want to do a quick video about sort of tying together um, the different dimensions of aspects of my life um, that I devote myself to working through recovery, trauma, and neurodivergence or neurodiversity. And I find that the core of my work has to do with the struggle that I found in integrating individual experiences that were singular. The, the difficulty that I faced in having to reacquire language had been that I experienced my perceptual reality without words. And so even though words came back, the experience itself of wordlessness it didn't go away. Once I had seen um, bookshelf, copier, desk, whatever that is. I still interacted with them functionally without having language to apply to them. In a weird sense, the quick way to say that would be that when my language mind failed, my autistic uh, perceptions kept working perfectly. So when that experience happened, it was very difficult for me to understand that anything had happened at all, that any problem had happened. And since I didn't have I didn't lose consciousness when I whacked my head, there was no reference points out in the world for me to guess that I had sustained a concussion, that I had anything related to a concussion. I had no interpretation at all. From my perspective, I had lost one part of how I made sense of things, and another part continued to make perfect sense. So that was really weird. I would learn for decades that I had gone through an aphasic experience, and and even now that I've gotten the medical facts, I haven't met anybody else who has experienced aphasia with anything like my form of autism, let alone synesthesia, cross processing my senses. And so, um, yeah, so then for whatever reason, my life required me to deal with, I've been in 12-step recovery for a long time by the time I went through brain rehab. It took me and for decades. And then it took me decades to go between brain injury and brain rehab and the clonidine. And then because I'm male and I grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and did not see combat, I didn't understand until uh, last decade that I could have experienced trauma because I had been raised to understand that only men who'd seen combat could experience trauma and PTSD. The way I was raised, women could have PTSD for whatever. Women had all sorts of medical things that I didn't understand, but I had just accepted that. That's how I was raised, and so I didn't have a sense that I had PTSD either. I didn't have any of these cognitive frameworks. And then once I did have the frameworks, then I began to see different dimensions of my own life that I was having to grapple with as I came in off the streets and I was reintegrating the clonidine and let things link back up again so that I could begin finding my words and knowing what I'm finding. It was very, very, very slow. Um, and it continues to be slow. The way my mind works is not the same way that it worked before. Um, in some ways, it works easier. In some ways, it's harder. For a long time, I felt when I fell and I was coming back that I know in the first couple of years after my brain injury, when I didn't know I had a brain injury, as I was trying to get back to how I had been, I was moving up into higher mathematics. And my math degree, I had 18 courses as an undergraduate. 15 of them were upper division. 15 of those courses were upper division junior, senior level. And I think 4 of them were independent study graduate level. And I did very, very well in all of them. But the difficulty was that there was an extra, I was trying to integrate something I didn't know I was integrating, no pun intended, mental integration. And I remember that the image, I started to more heavily rely on autistic sensibility to process input, and I tended to lean on visual metaphors and sonic metaphors, tactile, um, cross-processing my senses. And the way that I tactile and visual metaphor for what I felt like when I was trying to get back to an ordinary way of cognition was that I was walking hip deep through a bog of honey. It was just so hard. Anyway, so now I'm back and I'm finding my feet with these different aspects of my life, and things are going pretty well. And it's finally become clear that there's some shared aspects of addiction, trauma, and neurodiversity that I think play a role in building a peaceful life. Um, so if a person has trauma, one of the things that's pretty clear to me is that part of the experience of any trauma is being the person who survived it. And whenever a new, what I understand is that when a new experience happens, it changes every cell of the body. It changes everything about the person. And then the first step is to become safely oneself again. We might not think about that very much, but it's true. When something happens, I go, "What?" The first thing my body does is reestablish that I'm still me and I'm still oriented, and I have to find my way back to finding my way. And since everybody's safety thermostat and system is slightly different, then there must be a dimension of every experience, especially trauma, that is unique. As a unique experience, it's impossible that anyone has found language for an experience that no one's ever had before. Therefore, there must be a dimension of experience that is uniquely individual, does not have language, and that takes it out of the realm of it being possible to find established words to work with it. Nobody's been to that planet before. So the idea that I'm going to have a collective mindset to deal with individual trauma completely, that's an impossible situation. Similarly with as I explored my alcoholism and addiction from an autistic perspective to understand how it evolved out of my autistic experience and my trauma experience, and also having to cope with my experience without resorting to recreational chemistry, I quickly found that there were unique aspects of my experience that my sobriety required me to reckon with, and the more I found my words for them, I immediately found that they weren't something that I could talk about at meetings. They remained outside of the collective way of dealing with these experiences as a sober person. So there were certain aspects of my 12-step recovery that had to be explored individually for practical reasons. And then for neurodiversity, as best I've ever encountered, everybody who I find a more helpful definition to call it neurodivergence. And simply put, the way of relating to myself is very, very different from the way I relate to anybody else. And by making that kind of framework, it takes it out of the purview of the psychologists and all the different people about autism or ADHD. I don't care why you have a difference. But what I found is that in making peace with my experience, getting to know myself, getting to know the special ways that I relate to myself that I would not know how to articulate to anybody else are really important in terms of building a solid foundation in my life, building a grounded, peaceful sense that it's safe to be myself and find my way and express myself in the world. I consider that essential in the transition from a childhood mentality to an adulthood mentality, because ultimately my well-being as an adult person is my responsibility. Finding a way to do that, I wish I could pawn it off on somebody else, but when I try that doesn't work. The only choice I've ever found that's effective is to take responsibility for making peace with who I am. And so exploring the neurodiverse experience is again an individual experience. But as such, just like the trauma experience, just like the recovery experience, the individual experience is something that no one has ever been through as you or as me. And as such, that makes it a unique experience for which language could never have been found before. That takes it permanently out of the idea that a collective approach can work. And my hope is to provide a safe structure in which a person can feel affirmed and validated and honored and respected in standing up into the unknown of finding their own way, and let them know that I still consider them human and relate to them and honor them. That's kind of the point of my work. I don't know if I was really clear.